To that end, ISIS has posted new threats online, and Jeff Pegues has more on that.
The video purporting to be from ISIS promised an attack on Washington, but U.S. officials say there is no specific or credible threat against the United States. On Capitol Hill, police are telling congressional staff to take precautions like using the tunnels around the Capitol instead of walking above ground. Dismissed. And in New York, a new specialized police unit is providing extra security at key locations. SWAT teams and bomb-sniffing dogs are patrolling train stations, airports, and NFL stadiums around the country. But a response to a threat is only as good as the intelligence. And U.S. law enforcement believes one blind spot is when terrorists go dark, hiding their online communications. Investigators say members of ISIS lure potential sympathizers to social media apps and forums where the messages self-destruct or are encrypted. Law enforcement has been pressing the technology industry for access to that data when national security is at risk. But so far, privacy concerns have won out. CIA Director John Brennan.
I do hope that this is going to be a wake-up call, particularly in areas of Europe where I think there has been a misrepresentation of what the intelligence and security services are doing.
Brennan warns more attacks like Paris could be coming.
I would anticipate that this is not the only operation that ISIL has in the pipeline.
The tech industry says calls to weaken encrypted products undermine cybersecurity. Scott, a law enforcement source, is confident the attackers used encrypted communications, but it's unclear whether investigators have the attackers' cell phones and computers.
Jeff Pegues in Washington for us tonight. Jeff, thank you.
On how they were being tracked, leading them to encrypt their messages, making it harder for the government to track them down, thus enabling these attacks. An argument that you say is utter hogwash.
It's a blatant lie for so many reasons. As even the New York Times editorial page, which is usually quite restrained, pointed out yesterday in saying that it was disgraceful the way the CIA is trying to exploit the attack in Paris to demonize Edward Snowden and specifically encryption. To begin with, nobody has any idea whether the attackers in Paris used the internet at all, let alone used encryption. So they're just making this up. In fact, there's good reason to believe, given that they were siblings from the same neighborhoods, that they did most of their planning face-to-face, not using encryption at all. Secondly, it's been true for 20 years that terrorists use sophisticated encryption way before Edward Snowden ever came on the scene.
The Islamic State and other terrorist groups are turning to encrypted messaging services and the so-called dark web to spread their propaganda and possibly plot attacks. Conventional email and social media sites like Twitter and Facebook are now widely considered too risky for terrorist groups, potentially exposing their actions to authorities. New apps like Wicker, Silent Circle, and especially Telegram are being embraced by ISIL. Telegram allows users to send encrypted messages that are nearly impossible for authorities to decode.
What a lot of these platforms allow is it's like the old days, sort of World War I single message encryption pads. And it's a real big challenge that governments both in the United States and Europe and around the world are going to have to face.
Telegram also allows users to create channels to distribute messages, pictures, and videos to followers. ISIL used this feature to claim responsibility for the Paris attacks. On Wednesday morning, the terror group used Telegram to send out an edition of its online magazine, but by Wednesday afternoon, Telegram began shutting down some ISIL accounts. In a statement, Telegram wrote, "We were disturbed to learn that Telegram's public channels were being used by ISIS to spread their propaganda. As a result, this week alone, we blocked 78 ISIS-related channels across 12 languages." Twitter has also shut down hundreds of terrorism-related accounts in recent months. That hasn't stopped ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and others from releasing propaganda videos and magazines, but there are signs these groups are feeling pressure. Recently, ISIL moved its massive archive of propaganda material to the so-called dark web, a sort of parallel internet that offers near complete anonymity, but is more difficult for users to access. Even though it may be harder to find this material online, authorities say the message is getting through.
Come or kill. Come or kill. Come to the so-called caliphate, live a life of glory, participate in the final battle between good and evil on God's side. Come to the caliphate, and if you can't come, kill where you are.
Many of these encrypted online messaging services came about as a direct reaction to Edward Snowden's revelations of widespread data collection by the NSA. A major question now is whether the Paris attacks will lead to a backlash against these secure platforms. Jim Spellman, CCTV, Washington.
Right now, security officials in Europe revealing that this week's raids in the wake of the Paris attacks were made possible thanks to a discarded cell phone near one of the attack sites. The GPS feature on the device leading investigators to the alleged ringleader's hideout, calling into question some initial suspicions that the terrorists were using encrypted communication to carry out their plans and evade law enforcement on these secured communication apps. However, ISIS does have a track record of using social media and other technology to communicate and spread its propaganda. Shayna Glazer is a tech writer and tech expert that we're going to talk to about this now. Shayna, let's just go bit by bit, because initially after these Paris attacks, we heard about this program Telegram, and there was a lot of questions about whether or not the terrorists were using encrypted technology. But from what we know now, a simple discarded cell phone might have just cracked the case open. How can that be?
Well, that's exactly correct. So at first there were some channels that ISIS was using on Telegram, some encrypted channels, and recently they discovered a phone, and on that phone outside of the Bataclan was geolocation was on that phone, and that phone was actually recording where the terrorist was using his phone, and that actually led authorities back to some of the places that he had been, including the hideout that they found the other his kind of cohorts in.
And that's something very easily that we could have on our phone. If we don't switch it off, then our phone is tracking us wherever we go. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and it's something that's deep within some settings is a layer where, for example, Apple or other phones kind of tracks where you've been and tags your favorite places, and so they offer it as a service to better serve you and give you different locations around you, but it also can be used to track you in places that you've been.
It's interesting. So that could have been very simple, something simple, relatively simple to turn off in the cell phone, but because it wasn't, here was part of cracking this case. Talk to us a little bit about the encrypted technology, though, because we do know that there's a track record here. And in fact, we have a screen for our viewers. It has a lot of different apps that are out there, but some of them our viewers will recognize, especially if they have an iPhone. iMessage, for example, is one of those text messaging apps that actually is a little bit under the radar. I didn't know that, Shayna, that some of these apps make it tougher for people to spy on you if that's what you would like not to happen.
Yeah, so what you're seeing in this graphic was posted by the Islamic State to say to its members and potential terrorists that these are apps that we recommend that you use to communicate because their encryption technology makes it really hard to track. So that's what you're seeing here. And what you're seeing, the unsafe apps are those that could potentially be cracked by authorities easier. And so they're suggesting that people use harder to decipher apps such as a Telegram or a Safe Chat. And those are, again, encrypted. That means that people can't break in. They're not stored on a server for people to review, for authorities to review afterwards. And that's, and you will see those as typical communication tools on smartphones, on iPhones, and you might use with your friends.
I was really curious about Telegram, again, because it was mentioned so much, and there's no evidence it was used on this specific attack as of yet. But in Telegram, you can actually broadcast to a group of about 200 people a message. And so there was that question about it being used as propaganda for ISIS. this. What do we do about encrypted technology, Shana? I mean, there is privacy. Privacy is important. So how do you see being able to at least make sure that we're not at a disadvantage when it comes to terrorism?
Yeah, I don't think that there's an easy answer here, unfortunately. What you're seeing is, a tension between privacy and security. And in the past, there had been some efforts underway to track, our communications, and they weren't out in the open. They weren't shared with the public, so the public wasn't on board with that. So there might be some sort of way that we can get these technology companies on board with tracking and sharing the tracked communications, and then allowing authorities to review it. But I don't think that there's an easy or quick answer here, unfortunately.
It might come to the companies. Shana, it's great to have you in the program. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Members of the anonymous hacker group, they were promising revenge for the Russian plane disaster. This is what they said.
We'll be taking actions against this attack. 200 Russians killed is 200 humans killed. It don't matter what race you are or where you come from. Anonymous will not sit by and watch these terror attacks unfold around the world. We are actively seeking out and stopping and doing what we can to hinder anything online. Our first planned methods will be data mining, finding out these accounts that are linked to Islamic State and ISIS accounts. We will then be exposing them through a paste bin release like we've done in the past several times. And then when we know who our targets are, we will start attacking targets and taking them offline to hinder their online recruitment process. We are now waging war against the Islamic State, and ISIS should expect us.
In the meantime, though, the Paris attacks are reigniting and even stoking a huge debate that pits privacy against national security. This matters to all of you who use anything encrypted, whether you shop on sites or speak on the phone. New reports showing ISIS terrorists are hiding their communication with at least one app. It's German-based, and it's called Telegram. And another startup called Cloudflare is under fire for allegedly protecting dozens of ISIS-affiliated sites from attempts by the hacking group Anonymous to take them down. Steve Herod helped build the underlying technology for the cloud software company VMware and is the former chief technology officer. And here in a Fox Business exclusive, Jason Healy. He spent nearly 15 years working on issues of cybersecurity in both the private and public sector, and he's advised President Bush as the White House Director of Cyber Infrastructure, directed Goldman Sachs' team as well. I'll begin with you, sir, and you're a professor at Columbia right now. Talk to us about this issue of encryption. They've been using these sites, and encryption's a beautiful thing until it isn't, until the terrorists use it as a tool.
It certainly helps both the good guys and the bad guys. It fuels American commerce and helps protect us from hackers, but it does get used by the bad guys.
Here's just so that you know, on your screen, folks, something the Wall Street Journal got a hold of, and it was reportedly distributed by ISIS on, what's the safest way of chatting? And on the far left are the safest ways, and this way they wouldn't get caught. Go ahead.
But I think this is great because it shows that the terrorists have tens, if not dozens, of options. So a lot of what the U.S. government wants, the justice and intelligence officials, whom I used to work at NSA, so I certainly feel their pain of feeling that the terrorists can hide their communications. But the problem might actually be more the proliferation of these communications technologies rather than any single one.
Well, Jason, Steve, rather, you cannot stop evolution, especially technological evolution. So what is the answer here? You've built clouds. You've built all kinds of operations where I would imagine you have some type of backdoor password, which is reminiscent of that 1980s movie with Matthew Broderick of War Games, where they talked about a backward password where you can actually go in the back door and shut it down or try and figure out who's using it nefariously. Is that the answer?
It's a really important topic. Let's remember encryption, as we said, is used by all of us every day. It's used for our bank accounts. It's for e-commerce on iTunes or Amazon or Jet. It's where we store our medical records. And the issue here is that these backdoors are often used with very unintended consequences. If you want to open up a backdoor, I think it's more often than not that the bad guys actually are getting in. And this is where they can take money, they can get stolen identities. And so ironically, the backdoors that we talk about for keeping us safe can ultimately trigger more of the negative behavior.
Well, Professor, one of these companies is a German company, and we can't make a German company comply. We can't make them open up their systems.
That's right, and that's what makes it so difficult with the proposals that justice and intelligence folks want. It's very difficult to do this in a way that the terrorists just won't go to new technologies that are developing.
Well, so Steve, do we leave it up to Anonymous, the hacking group that's now attacking ISIS? And we cheer them on, but they've caused havoc themselves. They've apparently claimed that they're shutting down 5,000 Twitter sites that ISIS has been using. And we're sitting there saying, yay, we leave it up to them. Aren't we smart enough here and in Silicon Valley where you've built your companies?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic. I think right now I see new technologies and new entrepreneurs every single day. And security has become a really heavy focus here in Silicon Valley because it's an important issue for all of us. It's very hard technical problems, which a lot of people around here really flock to. And it's actually very good business, too, as companies need this just as much as we do as individuals. So I see just incredible innovation happening around this, and I don't think we need to rely on splinter groups to do things. I think really we can take technology and do a partnership with government, but really apply it in a way that doesn't hurt us individually and doesn't hurt all the commerce that we're doing online as well.
It's a pleasure to have both of you. I like that. We don't need to rely on splinter groups. Thank you. I mean, the ingenuity is here in the U.S. with people like you and with people like Jason. Thank you very much.
ISIS acknowledges a video published by Anonymous and calls the hacktivists, quote, idiots. On Monday, November 16th, the militants communicated through the messaging app Telegram and gave advice on how pro-ISIS supporters could prevent cyber attacks. After Friday's Paris attacks that left 129 people dead, Anonymous posted a video on Saturday declaring, quote, total war against ISIS. The hacktivist group threatened it would launch its, quote, biggest operation ever. However, ISIS brushed off the threat, saying, quote, what they gonna hack? The group advised its followers to avoid opening any suspicious links or communicating through Twitter direct messages. It also suggested renaming email addresses. But Anonymous has used its cyber hacking knowledge in the past to stir up trouble for groups it disagrees with. Earlier this month, the hacktivists identified more than 1,000 alleged members of the Ku Klux Klan and posted their names on its website.
As for ISIS, we will hunt you. Take down your sites. You will be treated like a virus, and we are the cure.
To defend our values and our freedom, we're tracking down members of the terrorist group responsible for these attacks.
Dans le cadre de l'attentat du Charlie Hebdo et des attaques terroristes qui ont suivi, les Anonymous de toute la planète avons décidé de déclarer la guerre à tous les terroristes.
It is up to Twitter to take the action that they have promised and remove these propaganda accounts. If they do not take care of this matter, then we will. As for ISIS, we will hunt you. Take down your sites.
We do not want to interfere with a peaceful event or with your right to protest.
We will not give up, we will not forgive, and we'll do all that is necessary to end their actions. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Cut off one head, two others grow back. Like the Greek mythological creature Hydra, Islamic State's online outlets are proving difficult to eliminate. Simon Mullis is from cybersecurity firm FireEye.
Covert channels being used at every step of the way. People are trying to hide themselves. The attackers are trying to hide who they are. They're trying to disguise the next phases of the attack and evade. And there are so many ways to do that it becomes a very, very tough problem.
Mobile messaging app Telegram is racing to shut down broadcast channels used by the militants. The Berlin-based company says it's closed 78 IS-related channels in 12 languages on its site. But the group continues to create more. Security researchers say the encrypted service is being used to spread propaganda and recruit members. It was also the way IS claimed responsibility for the Paris attacks last Friday. Telegram says it's making efforts to block public channels used by Islamic State, but wants to protect freedom of expression. Eric Oshard is Reuters' chief technology correspondent.
The service is used very widely around the world, often by people who have something they fear from their government, political dissidents. Telegram wants to keep those channels open for those people. Islamic State is exploiting that and Telegram is finding it hard to strike a balance between those two audiences.
IS supporters are continuing to take advantage, often simply changing a letter or adding a number to their names. And then there are the private members-only chat facilities, which remain exempt from scrutiny.
In a coordinated attack in multiple locations before it was over, more than 120 citizens lay dead and over 300 wounded. And Paris is now under a curfew for the first time since occupation from Germany. And there are reports that PlayStation 4 may have been used to help coordinate the attack. Several raids have taken place over the last few hours, and some officials are quoted as saying PlayStation 4s have been recovered. Belgium's Federal Home Affairs Minister said that PlayStation 4 is being used by ISIS to communicate because it is hard to monitor. And this isn't the first time that PlayStation has been linked to ISIS. Just a few months ago, a 14-year-old Turkish national living in Austria was sentenced to 2 years in jail and pleaded guilty to terrorism charges. He had reached out to militants in the Islamic State and had downloaded bomb-building blueprints from the internet onto his PlayStation that were later found by officials. And with terrorists knowing that cell phones and the internet are notorious for being spied on, taking your plans to a game does make a little bit of sense, according to experts, because they say that it's a lot harder to track. Not only can you use voice communications, you could get inside a party with somebody, send messages, but you could also get inside a game, for instance. And how many games have we seen where you can, write out a message or draw a picture in bullets? So, I mean, you could have, even if authorities were watching somebody, obviously they can't see what's happening in every single game. So people could be, gunning out messages, literally, in order to send things back and forth without actually having to send a physical message that could be linked back to.
This is a huge controversy that's developing over the past 24 hours. A Silicon Valley startup is caught in the middle of a cyber war between ISIS and the hacking group known as Anonymous. The company's called Cloudflare. It's a startup that protects websites against denial of service. Those are attempts to bring websites down. But it does not discriminate with its clients. It has come out and said that. Anonymous is lashing out at Cloudflare for shielding pro-ISIS sites from the hacking group's attacks. Here now in a Fox Business exclusive is the man at the top of Cloudflare who maintains his company is doing nothing wrong. We welcome Matthew Prince.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Thank you for being here. You're a brave man. A lot of people are furious right now with what they perceive to be the effort, or at least just doing basic business at your company protecting ISIS websites. Is that true?
We take these allegations extremely seriously, whether they come from a kid in a Guy Fawkes mask or a customer or law enforcement. And so when we heard about this, we reached out to our friends in the law enforcement community to review the list of the alleged ISIS sites. And we're quite surprised not only to not have any orders to take any of the sites offline, but to see that actually a lot of the sites that Anonymous had identified actually weren't related to ISIS at all. Some were Chechen rebel sites, some were Kurdish sites, some were Palestinian sites. And I'm not a political scientist, but I don't know many organizations that are more anti-ISIS than the Kurds.
Today's terrorists have a very powerful weapon in their arsenal: technology. Following a series of devastating attacks like in Beirut and Paris, counterterrorism officials believe it's harder to track them because they operate by going dark.
I think what we're going to learn is that these guys are communicating via these encrypted apps, which is very difficult, if not impossible, for governments to break.
Encryption, disguising messages with a code so others can't read it, has been around since 1900 BC with the ancient Egyptians and cryptography. In the modern age, the practice has evolved and gone digital, allowing for electronic communication that can't be deciphered. Most encryption programs transform information into a complicated series of letters and numbers, which can only be unlocked with a key. But one conversation can have many encryption codes, making it near impossible to crack. We use encryption every day to keep our personal information safe, like when we shop online or do our banking. But some databases provide the perfect cover for those who want it. Terror groups have used encryption for years, but now it's more secure and accessible. Tor, software originally developed by the U.S. government to protect private intelligence, uses an anonymous network of servers to create a space on the dark web where users are untraceable online. And even more convenient, coded communication is at our fingertips. Apps like iMessage, WhatsApp, Signal, Wickr, and Telegram use end-to-end encryption. Like this, messages are only visible to those sending and receiving them. Many services allow for messages to disappear after a set time, be sent to a large group at once, and to not be forwarded. Some officials blame the Edward Snowden leaks for revealing the NSA's tactics for collecting information, encouraging the wrong people to better cover their tracks. At the very least, it triggered a debate over widespread use of encryption, with a line drawn between the need for surveillance and the right to privacy.
Sacrificing our right to privacy can have dire consequences.
The government is clear. We need to, with the right showing to a judge, be able to get access to the information in those targeted individual cases.
Government intelligence agencies want tech companies to leave a flaw or a backdoor in their programs so they can decrypt messages if necessary. But a way in for the good guys also means a potential way in for the bad guys, like hackers and spies. Even with encrypted communication, U.S. law enforcement and government agencies still have ways of gathering critical clues and information, like from metadata. So as the world tries to navigate this new challenge in our war on terrorism, the next time you hear about encrypted messaging apps, at least you can say, "Now I get it."